Today is Thursday, October 26th. Unfortunately, we have to tell you about a mass shooting in the U.S. that impacted more than one location. And at last check, the manhunt for the gunman is still underway. Also, the latest fighting in the Middle East as world leaders clash over how to respond. And we'll introduce you to the new Speaker of the House and tell you what lawmakers are working on now that they've finally elected a leader. Plus, what's included in a breakthrough deal to get thousands of striking auto workers back on the job, which popular subscriptions are starting to cost more, and a boom in sleep tourism. Those stories and more news next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. We start today with another horrific mass shooting in the U.S. at two locations in Lewiston, Maine. A man opened fire yesterday at a bowling alley where a children's league was gathered, and then at a restaurant nearby. At least 16 people were killed and 50 to 60 more were hurt. Police have identified a person of interest, but at this point, he's still on the run. They're searching for a 40-year-old Army reservist who was trained as a firearms instructor. Police say Robert Card had reported hearing voices and threatened to carry out a shooting at a National Guard base. Earlier this year, he was committed to a mental health facility for 2 weeks. Police released surveillance photos of him entering the bowling alley wearing a brown hooded sweatshirt and carrying a military-style semi-automatic rifle. Well, now hundreds of law enforcement officers from around the state are looking for him, and hospitals have been put on alert. Authorities have ordered people who live and work in the state to stay inside and off the streets while they search for the gunman. Local schools are closed today, and President Biden has promised Maine full federal support, including the help of the FBI, ATF, and Homeland Security departments. Congress is back in business. It might have taken a few weeks, but the House did actually settle on a new speaker yesterday. GOP Congressman Mike Johnson was elected with the support of all 220 Republican members who showed up to vote, but without the support of any Democrats. That puts Johnson in charge of the congressional chamber and second in line for the presidency. That's an especially big deal for a congressman who actually has no experience in a House leadership position. But he laid out a plan for government spending bills that attracted a lot of support from all kinds of Republicans. Plus, more conservative lawmakers like that Johnson has pushed right-leaning positions in the past, like how he's opposed same-sex marriage and abortion, and voted against certifying the 2020 election. But there was no time for ceremony. Once Johnson was chosen as the new speaker, lawmakers got right back to work. Their first order of business was voting on a resolution to affirm support for Israel in its war with Hamas. It passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in a vote of 412 to 10. Next up, the House needs to consider a $106 billion emergency aid package for Israel, Ukraine, the southern border, and more. Plus, lawmakers need to get to work to avoid a government shutdown that's looming in just 3 weeks. So stay tuned. Israel has been keeping up with its intense strikes on Gaza as it also prepares for a ground invasion. In its latest updates, the Israeli military says it has struck more than 7,000 targets inside Gaza in response to the attacks on Israeli soil earlier this month. That's a higher number than in any previous Israeli military campaign in the history of Gaza, which is less than half the size of New York City. Though Israeli officials say it's not just about retaliation, it's also about defense, as they want to take out military infrastructure that the Hamas terror group has apparently built near homes and other civilian institutions. Either way, officials in Gaza say the overall death toll in the Gaza Strip has now far surpassed the death toll in Israel. Though remember, about 1,400 people were said to have been killed in the October 7th attacks on Israel, and more than 200 hostages taken. Well, now the Gaza Health Ministry says since then, more than 6,500 people have died in the Gaza Strip. Though at this point, those numbers cannot be independently verified. President Biden said yesterday he has no confidence in the numbers. And Israel says Hamas is actually responsible for some of those deaths because of rockets that were really meant for Israel but fell short. Though Hamas could be getting some more help, the leaders of Hamas and 2 other militant groups fighting Israel met yesterday to plot a path to victory, as they put it. But Israel has also promised to wipe out its enemies. And once again, the Israeli government said yesterday the next step is a ground invasion. Though there's growing international pressure to delay that invasion, at least until hostages can be rescued and more aid can reach the Palestinian people. So far, aid has been slow to make it to the Gaza Strip, and it's desperately needed. The United Nations mostly blames the relentless airstrikes in the region, as well as a shortage of fuel. European Union leaders are scheduled to meet today and are expected to call for a humanitarian pause to help get aid deliveries in. And the UN's General Assembly will hold an emergency session to vote on a ceasefire. To be continued. It was another dramatic day in a New York courtroom where former President Trump is on trial in a civil fraud case. In one surprising turn of events, Trump himself took the stand. The former president was there facing questions from the judge about comments he made outside the court when he said there were partisan forces out to get him. Well, the judge says he believed Trump was referring to him and his law clerk. And with that, Trump was fined $10,000 for defying a gag order that bans him from disparaging court staff. That's the second time in the past week that Trump has been fined for that same reason. About half an hour later, Trump abruptly stood up from the defense table, walked out of the courtroom, and did not return. In an email afterward, a spokesman for the former president accused the judge of infringing on Trump's right to free speech and says he's also interfering with the 2024 election. But the judge has said if Trump keeps violating the gag order, he will keep getting steeper penalties that could include jail time. The trial is set to continue today, but Trump is not expected to be there. Well, there has finally been a breakthrough. The United Auto Workers Union says it reached a tentative contract agreement with Ford, and this means the end to the nearly 6-week strike, at least for thousands of union members. The deal includes 25% pay increases over the span of the contract. It also includes cost of living adjustments, a 3-year path to top wages, a right to strike over plant closures, and more. The deal still needs to be approved by union members, but auto workers who have been striking against Ford are now able to return to work while the voting process happens. Ford is restarting production at 3 plants and welcoming back about 17,000 workers. And the hope is it inspires deals at the other big Detroit automakers, too. More news is still coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. We are all busy people going from one thing to another. So when we're on the go, we need a deodorant that will keep us fresh without having to worry about it. That's why I'm loving Lumi. I use it as my new go-to favorite deodorant for my underarms. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. And if that wasn't good enough on its own, Lumi is a whole-body deodorant, the first of its kind. So it's seriously safe to use anywhere on your body, from your head down to your toes. And it does all of that while being aluminum-free, baking soda-free, and paraben-free. Lumi's starter pack is perfect for new customers, too. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And by the way, the deodorant wipes are so perfect for on the go. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers are getting $5 off a Lumi starter pack with code NEWSWORTHY at LumiDeodorant.com. That's LUME deodorant.com. And that equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit LumiDeodorant.com and use that code NEWSWORTHY. Now back to the news. Australia's Prime Minister was honored with a state dinner at the White House last night. Besides the American First Family, guests included prominent business executives, members of Congress, and even some celebrities like singer Vance Joy, rapper Kid Laroi, and actor John Leguizamo. Though the whole event had actually been scaled back, so there wasn't such a party-like atmosphere in the midst of violent international conflicts. Earlier in the day, President Biden and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese did address these conflicts, saying they were united against all acts of aggression, particularly those by Hamas in the Middle East and Russia in Ukraine. The two leaders also discussed national security, climate change, and technology. Yet another streaming giant decided to follow its competitors and hike prices. Apple TV Plus went from being $7 a month to $10 a month. Plus, Apple is raising costs for other subscription services like Apple Arcade, Apple News Plus, and Apple One bundles, all by at least $2 a month. Apple says the new prices reflect what's being offered since it has drastically expanded its content selection and even now is still the least expensive option among the major streaming platforms. It's also the only one to not have ads on any kind of tier. Apple is also expected to revamp its apps and make more announcements soon. It has another big event scheduled next week. Remember last week we told you about controversy surrounding Scholastic book fairs? The company behind the fairs got a lot of backlash when it decided to have a separate section for books that deal with race, gender, sexuality, and disability. Scholastic said it had no choice but to give schools the option of excluding that section in the face of a growing number of book bans around the country. Well, educators and authors accused the company of caving to censorship, and online petitions called for Scholastic to take a stronger stand. So now, that is what's happening. The president of Scholastic Trade Publishing apologized, saying it was a mistake to segregate diverse books. But since book fairs are already underway for the fall, the controversial collection will stay segregated for now. Then, Scholastic says it will figure out another way to get a greater range of books to kids starting in January. It just hasn't settled on an exact strategy yet. When Barbie hit the big screen and became a box office hit, it apparently also gave Barbie, the doll, a big boost. Mattel cited the Barbie movie for helping to fuel a 16% increase in Barbie doll sales over the last few months and a rise of about 9% in sales for the overall company last quarter. Mattel also pointed to record sales of Hot Wheels once again and expects both classic toys to be a big holiday gift item. The Margot Robbie Barbie doll is selling especially well. That said, despite the increased revenue lately, overall, Mattel does expect sales from all of 2023 to be pretty similar to last year. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever felt like you know what you want to do, but for whatever reason, you just aren't doing that thing, even though you want it? If so, you aren't alone, and therapy may be able to help you figure out what's holding you back. One of the things therapy helped me figure out over the years is that getting mad or upset at myself when I didn't do exactly as I had hoped, well, that only made things worse. Instead, I was able to take the pressure off while I simultaneously learned what was going on for me. And it made a world of difference. So if you're interested, but you don't know where to start, BetterHelp is an online, convenient, and flexible way to give therapy a try. Just fill out the brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And pro tip, don't be afraid to switch therapists until you find the right one for you. There's no additional charge for that. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/newsworthy today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. So it seems travel is no longer just about adventure and exploration. Now it might be all about sleep. A report from Google Trends shows more people around the globe searched about sleep this year than ever before. So it's no wonder sleep tourism is now becoming a thing. Hotels and wellness resorts are marketing the chance to rest better. And we're not just talking about soft mattresses and blackout curtains. One hotel in New York, for example, launched 5 luxury sleep suites with AI-powered beds that use things like subtle motion to lull guests to sleep. Some expensive resorts are also offering full-on sleep retreats. Think sleep tracking, spa treatments, meditation, and even on-call hypnotherapists. Reports say some sleep tourists set out with a specific goal of learning new tactics for sleep and even changing their habits so they can not only get some extra shut-eye while on vacation, but also continue that trend back home. Well, thank you so much for joining us and listening today. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.